I'm Lawrence Francis, host of Interpreting Wine, welcoming you to the New York Winemaker Special series. Across these 8 episodes, recorded in December 2022, we'll be exploring the New York wine scene in the company of 8 different winemakers, covering the Finger Lakes in the first 6 episodes of the series, and Long Island in the last 2. And just like that, we reach episode 8 of this special 8-part series. But we close out the series in style today in the company of Roman Roth of Wollfer Estate. We hear Roman's origin story and introduction to the main protagonists at Wollfer. He talks climate in Long Island and impact on winemaking. He gives us a broader introduction before exploring the estate owners and culture, talking creativity at Wollfer, introducing us to their project in Argentina and Provence, talks the business model and attracting younger drinkers, project branding, before taking a deep dive into what younger drinkers really want. Enjoy.
I'm Roman Roth, the winemaker and partner at Wollfer Estate. We're a beautiful winery in the Hamptons, the heart of the Hamptons in Sagaponack, which is 2 hours, 100 miles east from Manhattan on Long Island. We're a beautiful wine region. We're surrounded by the Atlantic, and that really sets up the stage for our it's the climate. Basically, we have this lovely sea breeze that gives us very elegant wines, very food-friendly wines, and with this fantastic market of Manhattan, such a great food restaurant market, making food-friendly wines is really is the essence of our region. Uh-huh. And so we're not like California, which makes much bigger, heavier, richer style wines, which we do. We make some of them, but not to an extent where we never lose we catch the sea breeze, I call it, the acidity, 2.6 miles from the ocean. So that's the sort of the setup. We're on the same latitude as Madrid and Naples. So we have amazing sun influence, beautiful sunny days, cooler nights due to the ocean again. In general, very moderate climate, but so great location. And the combination of the sun that we have, of the sea breeze, has a couple of benefits. For example, we don't get any winter damage, knock on wood. So that allows us, when we already prune in January, we can decide, do we make our $125 Christian Cuvée wines? Or are we making our rosé wine? So already at pruning, we can decide that early on, while a lot of areas on the East Coast, you have to wait. How is the winter turning out and how is the spring? So going on the same, idea, as a result, because we are so cooler, have this cooler influence, we have a very late bud break, and that protects us from any winter, any spring frosts. And that's another huge plus. I mean, you hear last year, 2 years ago, I think Burgundy had a huge frost. 21, Sancerre had only 30% of the crop because of spring frosts. This year, Argentina had huge spring frost issues. So that's a big blessing, being surrounded by the Atlantic, and allows us again, we can prune, we can determine very early what quality level we want to make. And then finally comes the spring and summer, where now the coin turns around, where instead of getting too hot, it stays cooler. In winter, the ocean protects us and warms up the cold temperatures. And in the summer, it cools the temperature. And that gives us a very slow and steady ripening curve. If you ever read some books about Burgundy, they say they want 100 days from mid-flowering to mid-maturity to make a great Burgundy. And so on average, we are now around 111 days from mid-flowering to mid-maturity. Like 20 years ago, 25 years, I'm here 30 years now, we used to be 121 and a half days. So it's gotten warmer in the last 20 years for sure. And that's, again, one of the mixed blessings that cool climates have. You will make some, you will have, so climate change in some ways has helped us, but it's a pact with the devil. So you make 3 years, you will make the best wine in the world because you have cool climate, you're not drought stressed, you don't have spring frost, you don't have hail, but you may get, a hurricane or something. So that's unfortunately, every wine regions now has to struggle with climate, and it's part of life. So a great blessing for us. This cooler summer season, makes us again these elegant wines, and this is, I think, more and more becoming fashionable. There was all the time, especially in America, where everything is sweeter, even ketchup is sweet. Everything is sweeter than in the rest of the world. So people like the big, fat, sweet Chardonnays or heavy Chardonnays and the big, fat red wines, cough syrup red wines. But now finally people are fatigued a bit more of this and they want more elegance. Also, the cuisine has changed. You have now a tiny piece of meat with 3 vegetables or salads, not just a big steak with red wine as your only vegetable. So, the food has changed. As a result, more balance and more elegance is much more appreciated, much more desired. And this is exactly what Hamptons, what Long Island can do very well, or New York, for that matter. So that's the climate a little bit in a nutshell. Again, to finish it off with the last area in New York State to get a frost. So if you have healthy leaves, we have an immaculate vineyard. If you ever see pictures or if you ever come and see the vineyard, it speaks for itself. Absolute immaculate vineyard training, our vineyards, how we cluster position, shoot position. So all that is done. And so because we are the last area to get a frost, if you have healthy leaves and great photosynthesis, you can have great ripening all the way till November. Last week in October, we pick usually our top reds, Cap Sauvignon, sometimes even in the first week in November. As long as you have healthy green leaves, why do you need to pick? We're not forced like a hot climate where all of a sudden you end up in raisins and you have to pick. Otherwise, you have to add water and too sweet, too much alcohol. So we don't have that slow and steady ripening. So that's the climate. Wollfer Estate, we are family-owned winery. We are owned by Joey and Mark Wollfer, siblings. And we have young owners, which is a blessing because we don't have to ask for permission in France or at some insurance company or who knows who owns the winery. When we have an idea, when we see a beautiful development in the vineyard or something really ripening perfectly, I can talk to them, hey, why don't we make a special batch? Let's try something. And it's really, as a result, interesting for me as a winemaker. It keeps everybody very artisanal, even though we've become a fairly good-sized winery now, but we're very artisanal, very detail-oriented, and we can react and use those details and make something very special. So that's for our wine club, for our customers, a great bonus and a great plus to have owners who are interested in quality, who are willing to take risks. And it's not where where the CFO says, I need another 50,000 cases of 4% sugar, this, whatever wine. Much more interaction with the vineyard, with the climate, with the development of how the year unfolds, basically. And I think it's all about trust, great winemaking, and, fool me once, shame on me. Fool you twice, shame on you. So you have to be honest. We want long-term relationships. So, when we say we're making this wine, people can rely that this is at the top of the year. The top best perfect wine was made in this year with this, for this particular, our White Horse wines, for example. And you downgrade. If something didn't work out, that's the nice thing in America. You have the freedom where we can grow Chardonnay next to Merlot. In France, you're not allowed. In Bordeaux would make nice Chardonnay, but they're not allowed to grow it. So we have the freedom to make different things, grow many different grape varieties. And as a result, we have an ability to pick at different times. That's why we were joking earlier. I have a very long harvest. We make many different wines, but it allows to catch, to me, one of the key things to make great wine is catch the wine at the right moment. Pick the grapes when it's perfect. All of you had an overripe tomato. There's nothing worse than an overripe tomato or a mealy apple. And the same thing is with grapes. If you want a nice fresh rosé, you got to pick it when the grapes are vibrant and fresh and not overripe. So if you want a really rich, lush Merlot, you pick them when they're super ripe. So it all depends for which wines. But because we couldn't pick all of our vineyards in 1 week, when, let's say, we would have only one variety, having different varieties allows us to pick each variety when it's the perfect moment. And of course, the different styles. Rosé, you pick fresher, and the top reds we pick later. So it helps us to maintain this detail that we are attached to our vineyard. We pick everything by hand. So it allows us to do that, basically. So again, great young owners, Mark and Joey Wollfer. Then we have a fantastic management team. Again, you can't make world-class wine alone. You have to have a great team from the vineyard, which Richie Pisacano is, I think, the best vineyard manager on the whole East Coast. And it goes down, again, you can make the best wine in the world. If it's not sold properly, if it's not marketed properly, it means nothing. Mm-hmm. So we have a great marketing person, we have a great events team, we have a great hospitality team. And that really brings it all together, and it pushes you push each other. There's a great energy and a synergy at the staff where you don't want to fall behind. You don't want to be the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. You don't want to be that weak link that is not performing and keeps Wollfer on this great path that we've achieved. As I said, we planted next year will be 35 years old. We planted our first vineyard in 88. Mm-hmm. So we are slowly, we're getting now, age is the tough price you pay for experience. So, but we're getting to a point where really we have fine-tuned a lot of our different things. The vineyard is purring, basically. It's just in a great shape where it's not a roller coaster where we have, overcrop, undercrop, drought. We have a beautiful soil, our Bridgehampton loam, which has good water holding capacity, but also great drainage. It's a glacier that formed Long Island 10,000 years ago. So we have this Bridgehampton loam and a Haven loam. It's a clay loam silt mix on top of gravelly sand. So great drainage, good water holding capacity. Couldn't be any better soil to grow grapes. And the wines are happy. And that's why the French say you need to have a 50, 80-year-old vineyard to make great wines, because it's all about the balance. The vigor of the vines has to match the quality that you want to make. If you want to make a $5 cheap wine, you have to have a vigorous wine. Otherwise, you don't get the crop. If you want to make a $100 wine, you want to have a low vigor vineyard. But you can't force the low vigor onto it if you don't crop it. But the vine itself is vigorous. It creates this huge bush, which creates shades, which creates fungus pressure, which creates, unripe grapes because you have shaded grapes. So you have to be, it has to be in line of what you want to make. You have to have a goal, and the vineyard, the vines themselves have to be in line with your goal. There's no point pushing a camel up the hill, it's not working. So that's, I think, one of our strengths, that we are very realistic and have very realistic goals, or very honest approach to what can we make from this particular block, what can we make from this particular block in this fabulous season, or what can we make from this amazing block in a cool season. And I think everybody can make good wine in a good year, but Wollfer Estate makes great wines in the difficult years. And I think that has been the secret to our success, that we are very consistent with our quality and very reliable. And especially the media, journalists, restaurants for that matter, they make a wine list. In 4 months, the new vintage comes out. Well, it better be as good as the previous one. Otherwise, you look like a fool. And the restaurant has to print a new menu. And the writer who wrote the article, who comes out 6 months later, sounds completely crazy, recommending something when the next year had turned out like battery acid or something. So great quality across the years, across the board. And I think that's another important part. One great thing about Wollfer Estate is the creativity here. That's one of the things where any idea that's great has fallen on fertile ground. We make our summer in a bottle. I don't know if you ever look at the Wollfer website. If you don't see the bottle, it's a beautiful design that we started. People fight over the empty bottles. And of course, an empty bottle gets you into the door. It opens the sales. But the repeat customers come from the quality of the wine. And so they really go hand in hand. We become a rosé house, in some ways by default, but also by design, actually. It's funny. We started in 92 with the first dry rosé, when a lot of people made sweet rosés in America, and, White Zinfandel, terrible wines. And they wasn't taking serious the category. But so we made a dry rosé right from the start. And some people hated it because they wanted the sweet rosé. But the people who understood Provence rosé or classic rosé, they fell in love with our wine. And it started this amazing growth for us, where we make now over 100,000 cases of rosé. So That's a huge leg for us and a huge door opener, and amazing. It has brought young people to the winery, and that's the best compliment you can get when you walk into the tasting room and there's like 300 young people enjoying your wine.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great security for the future. If you have very old clientele, that's lovely and it's great. They have great purchasing power maybe, but well, sooner or later the doctor tells you stop drinking. So we have young people, and again, this amazing design. Joey Wollfer also is in fashion, and so it also fits. I think I often say if you're a winery in the middle of the outback and you're making a great rosé, well, somehow you can make a nice wine, but it's not your personality. We are by the beach. We're in the Hamptons, the summer retreat of the Hamptons of New Yorkers. It works. It matches. It's authentic. That's what the food friendliness of the wine. It just is a real character, and it's not fabricated by somebody, some sales or marketing department. Yeah. So that's, I think, why it also is part of our success, that it is authentic. And again, food friendly, dry rosés. We use always a blend. Here, and we've becoming this rosé house where we make on Long Island now, close to 100,000 cases. And it's a Merlot based. Merlot is the great variety of red wine. Merlot and Cap Franc are the two great red wine varieties, which is used. For white wine, it would be Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc, I would say. And we've always done a blend with rosé. I always say, if you make a single varietal rosé, they can be delicious, but it also, and then I do a virtual poking now. If I would poke you, it becomes very quickly annoying when somebody pokes you. And the same thing is if it's if it would be 100% Merlot rosé, it's nice, but let me switch to the white. Let me switch to a red wine, because it just subconsciously, it goes on your nerves. And that's the great secret of Provence, where they use, Chinson, they use Gamay, they use Vermentino, Syrah. There's always a blend. You can't make a single varietal. It's not allowed to make a single varietal blend in Provence. And so that in mind, we've always used different grape varieties for our blends. And rosé should be fun, elegant, not overcomplicated. But by using different grape varieties and taking it serious, those grape varieties, and making it, you get adding a little bit more texture, you're adding a little bit more structure, and now you make a wonderful, fun, elegant wine that also says something that is interesting. So that's the approach for our rosés, and that has been, we started making a couple of years ago. Then we started in Argentina. We brought our elegant style to Argentina, which makes a lot of heavy, sweet, heavy fat rosés, because usually they bleed, Signé, to make a bigger Malbec, they take 10 or 15% of the Malbec juice away from the grapes right away as they're crushing, so that the remaining, juice, there's less juice with the same amount of grape skins, which gives you a darker, more tannins, a big, bolder Malbec. But the juice that comes out is very flabby and flat because it was picked to make a Malbec. So what we do, we pick by design, we pick on purpose, we pick the grapes to make the rosé, so you capture the freshness, the vibrancy, the essence, the esprit. And so we make now close to 30,000 cases of wine in Argentina because of our elegant style. And I think a lot of wineries are starting to copy now this elegant style in Argentina. So we're very proud of that. We were sort of one of the first to translate this elegant style to rosé in Argentina. And then may
I ask, how hands-on are you able to be with the project in Argentina?
Well, at the beginning, it took a lot of hand-holding, and between their bad English and my bad Spanish, it took, and in general, if you say pink and I say pink, it's two different colors. When I say ripe and you say ripe, you maybe completely two different meanings.
Yeah.
So it took a while took a year or two to really explain the character of what we want when we say light and when we say, and so it took 2-3 trips a year to make sure. And of course, most important, the blending. And at harvest time, you would get analysis. We talked about when to pick, but just the approach that you deliberately pick the grapes to make rosé was already a game changer, changing away from bleeding, from Signé. So it's a fun thing to do. Of course, Argentina and just won the World Cup, of course. So it's nice to have it opens up our whole approach to well, I call it, we farm sustainably here on Long Island. And ultimately, I think the wineries who have all their eggs in one basket, in one tiny regions, sooner or later you have a problem. If your vineyard has frost, got winter damage, got a hurricane, well, what are you going to do? 1 year you can survive, but what happens if it happens 2 years in a row? And so by default, again, because the owner, Christian Wollfer, founded the estate, he started his career in South America, and that's why our relationship started to South America, where we wanted to fulfill his dream after he passed away to make wine in Argentina. And, well, it makes you sustainable because now we're making wine in Argentina. We make our main wineries in Long Island. And in 2021, we started the Summer in a Bottle Provence. We started to make rosé in Provence. Who would have thought that a small winery from Long Island is going to Provence, to the heart of rosé, and we're making, well, last year we started off with 35,000 cases of a beautiful rosé. I call it the most elegant rosé from Provence. You can always find bolder versions and cheaper versions and richer versions, but we found this amazing winery. It's a privately held vineyard. It's the biggest privately held vineyard held in Provence. 700 acres is Chevron Villers, the vineyard winery. It's an amazing place. All the grapes go over optical sorters. Have you ever heard of such a thing, that rosé goes over optical sorters? Where if there's a little damaged berry from bee stings or from bird damage or something, or stems get flicked out, get shot out. So quality and again, maybe the biggest compliment we always get is balance. So I call it the most elegant rosé. But my point was about sustainability. So now we make wines in 3 different countries. On top of it, we make a beautiful cider at Wollfer Estate. We make a serious cider. We pick over 13 million apples by hand. It's not made from concentrate. It's not bucket-loaded apples. It's just hand-picked apples, all aromatic apples. And that's our 4th leg to stand on. So it gives you a lot of confidence with the uncertainty of climate change, that you have at least 4 eggs in different baskets. So if one thing falls a little short, you can push on the other sides a little more, and you will survive, and you will become, well, you get better. So that's one of the things that we've focused on in the last couple of years, and I think it really is a safety cushion. We see that already happening. So that's sort of a bit of, in a nutshell, why we make wines in different countries. Also, of course, Long Island is a small region. We have 3,000 acres. So it is a small region. We've sort of come to the limit where what we can produce here with our 100,000 cases. And this was a great way to build and again, get more bang for the buck. We have a great marketing team. We have a great sales team. And well, now we have, again, more wines where we can reach, and the Wollfer name as a result grown. And so that's that's where we are in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. I mean, again, I didn't even have gone yet into our top wines. We make a beautiful Pinot Noir, which we're just releasing. We call it in honor of the founder, Christian's Cuvée. It's a $125 bottle that's getting released this year for the first time. In some ways, having been very successful with our rosé and with the cider, it has allowed us to really fine-tune our high-end production. Because, well, now you can afford an extra 5 men in the vineyard picking berries, picking leaf plucking. You can afford, better oak barrels, more barrels. You can afford to wait an extra year bottle aging. And so it really has made us, I think, has made us a better winery and focusing a lot. And then it's this lovely synergy. The rosé brings us young customers and, restaurants and lots of places. High-end wines we're making, that brings us this prestige that we can make world-class wine right here in New York on Long Island. And in retro, it's sort of, they work together actually very well.
Yeah.
So it endorses what Wollfer stands for, quality, and it brings us a lot of young people.
Yeah, and it's hugely important, and I'm actually really glad that you've brought that up as a point. I mean, it's something that I talk a lot about, and having followed quite closely the State of the Union, the State of American drink trends from last year. I know that was one of the key things that they were talking about, was that there was this disparity basically between people who were, I believe the term they used was sunsetting, and
Yes.
who were drinking less, and were placing their time on other activities, and it's just the circle of life, really. You need new people kind of coming through, and I'm lucky enough to have visited Wollfer actually right at the height of summer. It was July 2018 when I was there, and I wonder, because I do think it's something important to talk about, and we haven't really ever spoken about it too much. I just wonder how much of that, the position that you find yourself in, how much of that was, kind of by design, and how much of it was, I guess, that kind of conversation, really, that kind of two-way. You've got, it sounds like, quite a forward-looking business model in terms of you've got, younger people and that younger energy, bringing people into wine, bringing people into cider, gin, I think, as well. But then also there's maybe a slightly older demographic who want the quality.
Well, I think when you're creative, that has to be your guiding light. It's not the financial department that guides us, because you play it safe. You would not risk to go to Argentina. Why? You don't take the same risks. And, again, it started with Christian Wollfer, then his son, Mark Wollfer, and daughter, Joey Wollfer. They are very creative people, much more open to risk. That's part of the fun. I mean, why are you in the wine business to start with? Otherwise you could invest your money in I don't know, don't invest it in the stock market. It's the creation that you're building something that you leave for your children, for your grandchildren, is an important part for Wollfer Estate. And I think that's why you want to try different things. You don't want to just do the stale old thing just because that works. And slowly or steadily you milk it to death, and you outmaneuvered yourself, actually. You see that in history sometimes. You have to stay alert. You have to give great experiences to people, even yourself. I mean, what keeps you interested and alert and hot in winemaking? And these trips to Argentina, to France, I mean, it doesn't get more fascinating and more exciting to go there and make blends. And every time I come back with great ideas, the best ideas, you always see something and you have to adapt them and change them. And so these trips, and the same thing is for customers. Why do you go to a restaurant? Because you want to not sit with your husband or wife, just 5 nights in a row talking the same stuff. You want to go out and get stimulated and get, meet somebody, meet the owner, meet the chef, meet the host, or the waiter who's funny, entertains you, and now that gets you going and keeps you stimulated. And so that's what we try to create, these amazing moments for our guests who come to the winery. These feelings. I mean, during COVID, what did people buy during COVID? They bought because you couldn't even go out to shops. Mm-hmm. So you bought what you trusted and what you knew and what made you happy. And in our case, with Some in a Bottle, it ticks both of those boxes. It makes you happy when you see the bottle. It makes you feel like it's summer. It makes you feel like you're out on the beach or in the pool, whatever, even if you're drinking it at home, locked up in your kitchen, basically, or in your living room. So it's these experiences that we bring, and that's a big part of any wine that we create. Mm. What is there an emotion? Is there a feeling? Is there an excitement that comes along with it? The newest thing we just created last year is a new cider that we made. We call it Oishi cider, which means in Japanese delicious. It's a cider that we fermented with a Ginjo-style sake yeast. It is the most exciting. It's the only thing in the world right now that tastes like this. It's absolutely cool. It has 13 volume%. It tastes like sake. It's creamy, has a tiny bit more acidity. Mm-hmm. The idea was, I made a trip in Japan and I said, boy, if they can make such delicious sake with rice, which is just rice, if you're using great apples, hand-picked great cider as a base, shouldn't that taste even nicer? And we did test runs and we made something which is now absolute cool. And again, sake you can only really sell in Japanese restaurants. You can't sell it in a Mexican restaurant, for example. Nobody would buy it. But the cider there's a wave right now in America, and in people, in general, I think in England as well. And so now, hey, let me try this cider. And this is the coolest thing in a martini glass shaken with one slice of apple. And these are these little things that really sort of connect the dots at the end is how many touch points do you have with your customers? What happens? Or are you just making the same old wine over and over? So it's that creativeness. It's bringing people in, making them feel part of it. And we still, of course, because we are still a young region, there's still this surprise effect and the discovery effect, and that they rooting and they are the supporters that we help you become a wine region and become a great winery. And that gives an emotional bond. I bought your first, whatever, Oishi, the first summer in a bottle, your first rosé that we make in 92. And that makes people loyal, basically, and stay with the brand.
Yeah, it absolutely does make a lot of sense as well. Again, having been there, I'm sure, you want repeat customers. You want to give people something new. You want them to give them, that hospitality. I think, it extends to the creativity. And I'm curious then how does that then apply when you then are sending, I guess, those products out into the world? Are those Argentinian, are the Provence projects, the things that I saw, the gin, the cider, are all of those things under a kind of a Wollfer banner, under a Wollfer brand, and essentially trying to take people on that same journey of discovery, journey of creativity through the brand, but obviously in their own geography?
No, we have, again, Joey, Wollfer, and Mark, and myself, but the goal has always been to create a very strong and recognizable brand. This is, without that, you have nothing. If you're shooting because we make lots of different wines, but if you're shooting in 5 different directions, it doesn't come together. It has to work. It's like a snowball creates an avalanche. It's like you need to keep rolling, and there has to be growth. And the growth doesn't always have to be financial, but it has to be in reputation. Mm-hmm. So as long as you're growing in reputation, the rest will follow. And that's one of the reasons why we do go out to England or to Germany or Sweden, Denmark, where else are we? Japan, New Zealand. We have a couple of markets where we are pushing, because you can't just wait in your tasting room hoping that you become a world-known winery or a world-class winery. You need feedback. You need these experiences and we've had this now happening, where we had in New York a restaurant, and your Merlot is a little expensive. I'm looking for a cheap glass wine. And we said, no, but it's fantastic. It's a quality handmade wine. Well, he never took it. Then he made a vacation trip to Sweden, went to a restaurant, saw our red wine, our Merlot, by the glass in Sweden, and he texted from the restaurant, all right, I'm buying your wine and pouring it by the glass now. If they can do this in Sweden, why can't I do this? And anyway, so there is, again, a synergy that comes back from pushing a little further, even that it doesn't always make sense that you have to make a trip when you're only selling 150 cases, let's say, to a country, and I need to make a trip, and it costs as much as you're earning from that country. But it's not always about money, and that's the fun part about the wine business, that it's that you're creating something. You're holding, after 3 years of waiting, you finally hold that bottle in the hand, and then finally, it can be something, and that's one of the things I haven't even talked about yet. Mm-hmm. So everybody knows now slowly that Wollfer, that we make fantastic rosés, but we make these special wines, and we make wines with longevity, and our climate is so suitable. Our vineyard practices are so suitable to make world-class wine. And when you finally have a bottle that can age, a red wine that can age 40 years, or our dessert wines who've gotten 94 points from Parker, and the Merlot is one of the highest rated wines on the whole East Coast. When you open one of these bottles in 25 years from now, when Long Island will be 20 times more famous, because there'll be 20 more vintages promoting this region, and you have one of those early bottles, it's a trophy, basically. And so that's a whole nother aspect that we haven't even scratched the surface yet. If you go to a collector now, they have their Bordeaux, they have their Burgundies and whatever, but Long Island is part of ultimately that we make wines that fit into these collections. And again, back to sustainability. Even Burgundy, anybody, any wine region, you can only survive if you can if the world realizes in this particular year, the climate was perfect from flowering to all the way till harvest. So whoever, New Zealand, Long Island, Switzerland, it doesn't matter. They made the best vintage, they had the best conditions, and they made the best wine in the world. While in a famous region, it was burning or there was hail and they only got 20% of the crop and charging you now crazy prices because they only have 20% of the crop. So in order to survive these up and downs, and young people who are not as loyal anymore to the old regions because they want to, they grew up with new regions because they can't afford the old regions anymore almost. They will become loyal and the whole world, I think, will shift towards this understanding. Well, New Zealand, whatever, Chile had the best conditions and Long Island this year. I'm investing my money in those two regions. And then the following year, who knows, we may get a hurricane or Chile has a frost problem, but at least you can survive. We will be able to survive because and the customers will come back the following year where you have fabulous conditions again.
I think it's absolutely fascinating, and my favorite types of interviews are really the ones where I feel like we're kind of just getting going when we're almost our time is up. But it keeps going around in my head though this idea of bringing new customers into wine and into the cellar and trying and I see this as an issue in so many other regions and other wineries and I'm just curious that if you're at least having those younger people there and yourself or the hospitality staff and your colleagues, what is it that you think young people want, in terms of what is it that's going to get them drinking wine rather than those other products? And as you say that loyalty or lack of loyalty, it goes right the way across not only wine, but other drinks categories as well. So what do they want, do you think?
Obviously, and it goes without saying, the wine has to be nice. The wine has to be drinkable. The wine, nobody wants flawed wines anymore. The world has gotten too good. Winemaking has become too professional to have funky wines. But then people want a story, or they want to have a location where they have had an experience, or they want a story, or they want to feel that it's aligned with their outlook. Sustainability is an important part, for example, that that you are authentic, that you make wines with character. You don't want to make airline wines, I call them, where, gets the job done while you're flying, but nothing to write home about. You want to make a wine that speaks to you that, wow, this is different. This has an edge. This has a little tannins. I don't want to make a wine that's just quaffing wine, that has no character. I always compare it with eating a pear. A pear is a fairly neutral fruit, but the little bitter skin is what makes it interesting. And the same is with anything. If you eat fish, it's quite neutral. You need wasabi and you need soy sauce and you need salt and pepper and you need burning, grilling, the meat that makes it tasty and smoky or whatever. And the same is with wine. You want to taste the skins. You want to taste the yeast. You want to taste the earth. You want to taste obviously fruit has to be there. Otherwise it would be unbalanced. It would be bitter and nasty. So you have to find this balance, and then you have to convey what you're doing and why is the character like this, and not just luck or that it just happened. It's the sun, it's the climate, it's the soil, it's the way we make the wine. And so, and just there comes my little commercial. We do sell in England at Hedonism, which is our store, our distributor in England. And that's the nice thing too. People want to try new things and try something different and surprise their friends. Or if you have a wine club where you're tasting blind, throw a ringer in. It's nice to taste 8 bottles of Burgundy, but boy, is it fun when there is a ringer in there that nobody thought coming and thought this was a great Burgundy, and now, well, it's from Long Island or it's from wherever it may be.
Yeah, and on the point around what you see is what the younger people are looking for. Interestingly, I didn't hear you mention cost, because that's often one of the things that's put out there first.
Well, the people choose with their wallet, of course. They elect, it's like an election. So you have to be true to a category. You can't be, you have to be very open about it. This is our entry level. This is what it is. This is not the wine that will age 40 years, but that's why it only costs $18, or in Europe, whatever. And so you have to, the story, the price and the story have to match. When it is your top, the oldest vineyard, when it is where you didn't skip any things. But it's like anything, people have no problem spending amazing amounts for sneakers right now. And it's just a bloody sneaker. It's my old ones even, So my daughter is in the sneaker business, I guess, buying old sneakers and buying expensive sneakers or tennis shoes, whatever you want to call them, sports shoes. So it's all about what stands out. Why are you happy to spend this money? Because it is just so rare. When you're only making of this wine, you're making 600 bottles. You're the only one who get these bottles. And so, again, that's one of the things that you have to be able to reach the people and tell the people. There's enough people out there who are looking for, but how do you get out? Marketing, social media. You can't be just sitting waiting in your tasting room that it sells. At the end, word of mouth is the best, and when people are excited, they talk about it, and that's how you get customers and can go from there.
Amazing. And I just, thank you once more, and just throw the door open to you really, just to mention what website or social media handle we can track you down on.
Yeah, so it's Wollfer, WOLFFER.com is our website. It's a beautiful website. We have a fantastic wine club here in America, of course. In Europe, hedonism in England, in Germany, it's called Love in a Bottle. If you go to loveinaBottle.com, Sweden, we have a number of places. So it's nice that we ultimately, making, it's a little ripple effect. You throw your tiny little stone in and it slowly makes little bigger and bigger waves. And again, nothing has to be built. Rome wasn't built in one day. And so we're very realistic. Things come, slow and steady wins the race. So, and the one thing is we're not going away. And once we commit to a market, we go and visit, we go and stay there. It has to be built. It can't just be an overnight success. And then those overnight successes usually also fall apart, when the fashion is over. So we're trying to be there for the long haul.
A huge thanks to today's guest, Roman Roth at Wollfer Estate. Please do help to amplify this episode and the series by sharing the direct link, which is interpretingwine.com/483. To catch up on any other episodes from the series, you can find direct links to all the episodes from the series in the description below. That does unfortunately then bring the New York Winemaker Special series to a close for now. All that's left to say is a huge thank you to all guests that have appeared in the series. Collectively, these are of course the most up-to-date information you can find. It's been absolutely brilliant catching up with a number of the winemakers that I visited in 2018, and of course meeting several of you for the first time. This year on Interpreting Wine, a special feature will be more focused on the United States and wine growing regions there. So do make sure you're subscribed to Interpreting Wine wherever you listen to podcasts to be alerted when these series go live. And of course, in the meantime, I'd love to have you following along with me on social media, where I'm at Interpreting Wine on Instagram and Facebook, at Wine Podcast on Twitter, and email hello@interpretingwine.com. See you next time.